sell you no land because only the clan mothers can own it. So they tried to trick us with paperwork. That's where the problem came in, because they conditioned us using uniforms and uniform commercial code as the application of law. But it was the Admiralty jurisdiction in the override of the law of the land, which is the great law. So the women say, no more. Was this Admiralty shit, we only following the great law now. It's already in the public domain by one of the clan mothers in Canada talking to the Pope. It's not a secret. Right? And that's how we gave public notice to all of the clans, because all of the clans is involved. Even the ones that think that we ain't talking up for them, we talking up for them too. They just don't know it yet. Because one thing about it, we fight amongst each other, but I promise you this, we'll burn this bitch down, get us pissed.
Okay.
Right? So we can fight amongst each other, but right now we getting the imposters out the way first, and then we can fight in a more civil manner. Right? But if you don't know civics, you don't know how to be civil. And if you want to be the master of your own destiny, you have to live the applied civics. Civics is taking you back to the law of the land. Right? And when you get back to the law of the land, you stuck under the law of the matriarchs. Mm-hmm. And it's been said 1,000 times over, there will be no balance until the great mother is did what? Put back on her throne.
Back on her throne.
So, that's the order of the day. Put her back on her throne. We the clans organic to the land who've been invaded by people that look like us, that's not us, that's trying to disassociate us from the land in order to capture the land holdings from the mothers. I'm the cleanup man. I'm the baby boy that come at the end of all of the rest of them that couldn't figure it out and tell them what they missed. It was all part of a protracted struggle of 500 years war. It's supposed to have been over in 1992. Right? So we go back to what happened in 1992. Rodney King got beat by the police. Mm-hmm. So King Rodney was put in their custody. Simultaneously, two things is transpiring on two different parts of the land. They see the Rodney King beaten, but they don't see King Rodney being wrapped up by the police and put in the car. Two things playing out on the land at the same time in the public domain, but do the tribes remember their culture? Because if you don't remember your culture, you will never know that the elders is talking to you and the ancestors is using what they have in front of you to reveal what they're doing behind you. Right? So while the ancestors is forcing the hand of those who's trying to oppress us, they reveal in their dirt, because everything they do has to be put in the public domain so we can show the people in some form or another. Normally they put it in the forms of art and entertainment because we don't take it serious. Mm-hmm. Right? And then they tell the story. And then they tell there's so much symbolism that you have to know hieroglyphics so you can read what's being said. Because they talk in the images of animals and automobiles. Right? So we get fast and furious right before the Transformers convert into the gorillas. It's a cannonball run, a scavenger hunt, race across the land, chasing the drag queen that's trying to impersonate the queen. The Statue of Liberty. Right? Where the Treaty of Peace and Friendship was signed in Paris. Where we got the Statue of Liberty from. A drag queen. Right? And what they erect at the same time in Paris? The Eiffel Tower. The same designer. I fell to a drag queen on the land. And they call her Martha Washington. And that's how you chop down the cherry tree. You replace it with testicles.
Facts.
So now there's no true air coming from the leadership arena because the leadership is artificial and it's a drag race across the land. So they strike out on the Louisiana expedition in order to map out the Louisiana territory to get the drag queen from the East Coast to the West. So now the Chiefs got to follow and backtrack in order to chase the drag queen on the cannonball run to pick up all of the pieces to the puzzle that put it all back together. So they said that when they did the Lewis and Clark expedition, that all of our castles was empty. Why are our castles empty? Because we don't send our sons to war if we ain't going with them. I don't care if I'm 90 years old. My son's going to war. I'm going to be one of the shooters.
Okay.
And that's the reason why the Chiefs wore the war bonnets, to make them visible to the rest of the clan and show them the direction that he going. We didn't wear that shit on a day-to-day basis. They act like we just walked around in that shit like that was our everyday dress code. That was for ceremonial purposes. And if we go into war, the tribes need to see us at a distance. So we wore the war bonnet. They know where the chief at. Whatever happened, they ain't gonna let the chief fall, even though he the first in the march. So then they told us we lived in teepees. We didn't live in no goddamn teepees. That was camp settlements on our way to the Gullah Wars. But we don't know our culture, so we can't read that shit. So Elijah Muhammad say, accept your own and be yourself. Noble Drew Ali say, you are what your ancestors were without a doubt or contradiction. Put your hands and knees and motherfucking forehead on the ground and ask Mother Earth where you belong. There won't be no mistake whether you from this side of the water or not. We the only ones talk to Mother Earth like that. They simulated in Islam with what they call as-salat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? But they don't know what we was doing when we got down in that position. They didn't know we was consulting with the greatest oracle of them all, Mother Earth herself, because she'd give you the whole history of the earth if you mentally strong enough to accept it. They call that reading the Akashic records. Because her daughter Akasha was the bookkeeper of all time. Until they pissed off her sister, she came out raging about her babies and they called her Kalima. And Sekhmet. But when you put it all together, then you can reach the infinite potential that we was all meant to reach. But they keep tricking us with the BS. Yeah.
I agree.
And that's a critical part of shadow work too. That's part of knowledge of self. Tapping into the ancestral realm is tapping back into your DNA reservoir. All of the ancestors are present in you. If you listen, you can hear them, and you can hear them arguing with each other when the dirty one's trying to put you up to do some bullshit. But we ain't tuned in like that no more. We've been too busy trying to catch the Holy Ghost in the church where we put ourselves under the Amen spell of the unknown gods, telling the gods to remain unknown. So we could never get our shit back because the God that's known is the I-10, high noon, solar disk. Can't miss it. Right there, dead center of the sky. But the Amun comes out with the moon. At night, in the dark, behind the scenes where you can't recognize the God. And that's why they say, let your light shine into the world. Be the I-10 and not the Amun.
Okay.
Don't hide in the shadows, come out in the light. Or be the light that you bring. And let the light rest on the truth. And stand in the position of right, the rightful heirs.
Well,
we're not Africans. We sprung up all over the world as with the dark mother in the beginning. It was all females, and they all was melanated. But they also carry a spectrum within their genome. And so the 12 daughters of Isis is representative of the 12 signs of the zodiac that sit around the Tawaret seat in the center. On Earth, it's the 12 daughters of Isis, which made up the 12 distinctly different genotypes that became phenotypes on the planet, or 12 nations. This is why they be talking that Israel shit, but it don't got nothing to do with the Bible, because the Bible is made the same way you make a core out the virus, and then you use the shell to build the immune system. They trying to make us accept part of a shell of our historical record as the whole and the entirety of the truth, when it's only a shell of what we used to do thousands of years ago. But the genetic memory make us believe it, because the part of the story they tell, we already know. Jesus is Isis, and her son is Emmanuel. We called him in ancient Kemet Heru. And the hero, as really not who he is, that's the position he holds as the heir to the throne, being the fruit of his mother's loin. He's a mama's boy. This is where masonry sprang from. Now, the only thing is, mama gonna pick somebody to counterbalance him based on her star chart. What's her birthday? And then she gonna time together in the heart chakra. That's called passing off your mitochondrial host. Right? This is what arranged marriages used to be. People think they still choosing their wife all the time. It's an arranged marriage through the energy, because when you do it in the spiritual, it manifests in the physical. And mama already picked who she gonna pair you with, and you ain't got no control over it, but you think you do.
The creed.
And every time you try to talk to the one that she told you you can't have, you don't get no play. And the higher your spiritual rank, the harder it is to play that game. That's an educational construct that's used to disassociate us from the land.
Okay, but do you believe that they could have brought some slaves over here? Like
they brought slaves, but they wasn't from Africa.
They was already on these lands.
No, they brought slaves with them. We knew, because we know the wars they fought. They fought Mongolians, Huns, and Vedics. They tell you that they brought the slaves when they came, but they didn't bring no slave ships from Africa. The slave ships came from Europe.
That's different. That's now.
It's in the history books. It's not even debated. When the settlers came, they brought servants with them.
Okay. When
the servants didn't look like us. Right. The servants didn't look like us. When they was bringing them over here, they had to create Indian schools so they can teach them how to replace us. This ain't no secret. Pull up the pictures of Indian schools and it'll show you little Asian people that they saying is Indian. And they're using the Indian schools to teach them how to be Indians. They imitating us. This is what the switch out happened on the so-called Trail of Tears. That's when they marched all of us back into the South as the old Mississippian tribe root clans. They didn't want to carry them to the Reds, but some of them still got there. Somebody had to teach them people the culture to keep up certain rituals in order to maintain a certain level of balance while we was in the conflict. Right? I was telling the sister earlier, it's a video of Mama Mashpee Mama Bear. And in the video, she said, y'all stop being so hateful toward the black people, because if it wasn't for them, we would have all got wiped out. They did the slave thing to save all of us. But what are they talking about? They're talking about the George Washington Challenge, which was the Conjure wars that we were fighting. And the only way out is to educate yourself till you the highest educated out of all of them on both sides. Right? So I was studying and reading books and trying to do self-development. I wasn't trying to get in no position to be teaching nobody anything. I was just trying to self-improve. But the sheer level of information that I was able to consume over a period of time made me qualified to fulfill a certain function as one of the chiefs on the land. But I can't take the test to be the chief until I turn 50. Women's take the test at 40. Right? So when I get ready to turn 50, all hell break loose on me. So now, 5 years later, all heaven about to break loose. I call that a turnaround if I ever seen one. 12 daughters of Isis. All different skin colors and hair textures. The 12 daughters of Isis are the matriarchs of the 12 lands of the earth. The Isis seat is in the Grand Canyon. The simulation of the Isis seat is the house of Pharaoh in Kemet. But the real power seat is in the Grand Canyon, the original temple of Isis. So when I talk about putting the women back in their rightful place, I'm talking about restoring the matriarchal structures of the 12 daughters of Isis and Isis herself, the Great Mother, which is only a title. When you say Isis, people think you're talking about a specific person, but many people have held the Isis seat. And this is why you have so many people reincarnated saying, I'm Isis, and think they remember holding the seat. They probably not lying, but we call that the Symbol effect because they all in a hive mind group. And they can only be in the hive mind group by going through a process of weeding out the parasites from the true supporters of the sisterhood. Mm-hmm. And they use me for a crash dummy to weed out some of those frauds. So using me as a crash dummy, I don't give a damn. I'm a whole gorilla. I can take it. And I can defend myself too, because I'm a Scorpio and I will sting that ass. So when I talk about restoring the Great Mother, that's restoring the proper heir to a proper position in order for the proper structure to be restored so that we can have balance. That's all it's about, is restoring the balance in humanity to match the balance in nature. They call it voodoo, and that's why they didn't want us to practice it. Because it teaches you to identify your ancestral links wherever you're from on Earth. And then you get to study all of the priesthood. So when I talk about the women being restored to their proper place, I'm just talking about put the structure back in place that belong on Earth for Earth to run the way Earth is supposed to run. And we have heaven on Earth at that time. Or regions, you would probably call it regions. Nation is a term used in the English language to impose admiralty. So there's Eurasia was broke up into 4 sections. What we call the motherland was broke up into 4 sections, and the Americas was broke up into 4 sections. Each section had a matriarch that governed over that area. And it's really to allocate the resources equitably across the land to make sure everybody have food, clothing, shelter. And those sections had their matriarchs, and then they all had one they elect to sit as the big mama. This is going to automatically happen by nature. And the women who are partakers of it, as the energies from the sun continue to shoot these flares down here, they're going to start becoming aware of their rank and position in the area that they can manage resources for. Because when we talk about the royal families of the earth, our job is to take care of the people. That's why they call us shepherds. And the women are the compassionate energy of love that allows mothers to oversee children without losing her shit. That's the same energy we're trying to usher back into the collective of the human family. That's feminism. That's not matriarchy. Feminism is the counter to It's the tail side of the patriarchal coin to usurp the rightful place of women in the society. Feminism and matriarchy clash. They're not compatible. This is why you see a lot of sisters that joined the feminist movement. They left in disgust because it wasn't the matriarchal structure of the tribes. The men in the tribal structure of matriarchy are required to do men shit. In the feminist movement, the men are required to pretend to be women. Because on the patriarchal side of the coin, the patriarchs, all of them are boy lovers. They still Romans, still at the end of the day. So they want to usurp the matriarchy with the feminist movement, and people ain't even paid attention that half of the original feminists was drag queens. Teaching that doctrine to the women as if it's the doctrine of the matriarchy in order to confuse the genetic memory of the people. We know that the women can manage the household and that the men hold a specific function, but if the men is being systematically blocked from carrying a portion, then it makes it an off-balance system. And this is about how the feminists was able to undermine the rise of the matriarchs. But what he's talking about is total feminism. What you said right quick, because you said something that was that's real important to understand. It's not about being on different levels. It's about being on balance.
Right. I agree.
You remember when you go to Big Mama house for the barbecue, Big Mama is in the kitchen. She cooking collard greens, black-eyed peas, cornbread. But who outside barbecuing?
Daddy's outside at that grill.
That's Big Papa. That's Uncle Joe. That's Uncle Willie. They out there drinking and talking loud and barbecuing all around the barbecue while Big Mama in the kitchen cooking. That's balance. She can't cook and barbecue at the same time. That's balance. Right? The man is still needed. Who gonna grab that side of beef when we finna feed 250 people and drag it across the field and put it on the fire? That's Big Papa and them job.
That's right. Absolutely.
And while they out there doing that and chopping firewood for the barbecue, Mom and Auntie them in there wiping snotty noses, changing diapers, giving babies baths that they got dirty throughout the day. You know, got aunties in the kitchen, weaving like a well-organized machine. We carrying out our family functions to help the family according to our skill set. So we learn to be trained in the area where we can best support the structure of the family as being functional. We have to remember, they put it on the record already that one of their prime tools of oppression was to break up our family structure because we was too strong. Mm-hmm. And this was the tribes doing this. This is how we lived. Everybody had something that your skill set made you qualified, you the most qualified, you obligated to fulfill the function. That's why I'm right here doing this conversation right now. Not because I want to, because I hate social media with a passion. I don't care what I hate. My people come first. I can get over it. I can live through the struggle. I'm built for this shit. Mm-hmm. You know, I can get punched in the face, but I'm going to punch back.
Okay.
Right? I don't mind it. It's the problem don't come in from the enemy because I can whoop their ass. The problem come in is from the friendly fire. The ones that's supposed to be supporting our return to the land and reclaiming our shit, but they got confused as to their own self-identity and think they from somewhere else. A fictitious place that don't exist. They from ancient Morocco. The word ain't even 500 years old. So how you from ancient Morocco? The word not ancient. You don't have an ancient map that say Morocco. When you pull up a map of the Americas and say, what was the lay of the land tribally before 1492, I don't see Morocco on that list of tribes. They all listed. The major tribes across the land are listed, from Canada all the way. If you want to, you can go into South America with it. But none of them is called Morocco. None of them is called Moor. They got names like Choctaw, Chickasaw, right? The terms that we got from the oppressors, like the Mohawk, the Tomahawk, them weren't original names. Them was exonyms, right? But we used the name because we was in a transition across the land. So we didn't care what they called us as long as we got to the Gullah War. We didn't know that they was genociding us on paper with these terms and replacing us with foreigners to pretend to be us.
Okay.
Right? So they disassociate us with the slave narrative, which was strictly for educational purposes only. It was created in Notre Dame University, and the slave ship proves it as the blueprint for where the narrative was drawn up. It was all under the directive of the French. And that's why the Eiffel Tower sits where the Treaty of Peace and Friendship was drawn up. And wasn't no tribal chiefs over there. Not one. We had nothing to do with that shit. That had nothing to do with us. You don't see nobody named Chief nothing on there. You don't even see no L's and Bays on there. Or no Ali's signing that peace treaty. So how is that our history? That's the dogma. Morals and dogma. Albert Pike, remember? The moral people are going to be the righteous people, and the righteous people are the people that's in the position of the right. Even if you call them civilly mortis, meaning they dead by the law, we only dead to the Admiralty jurisdiction that claim we crashed our landmass into their ship, the good ship Plymouth. Y'all, they switched the name in the history books and called it Mayflower now. But it's the Plymouth. And Malcolm said we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. So when Lois and Clark is doing their survey, they trying to determine the extent of the wreckage from us crashing our landmass into their ship. So we all presume dead and lost at sea, so they call us black. But it's also significant reference to those stealthy priests that wore the color commonly associated with the term. The Black Wolf Clan, the Black Eagle Clan, the Black Hawk Clan, the Blackfoot Clan, right? The Black Cougar Clan, which we know today is the Black Panther Clan. All these different clans are the clans that's fighting the actual Conjure war of self-identity lost in a contract, a blood oath, then the secondary constitution that's kept in the George Washington Masonic Memorial was written in the blood of the Chief Crispus Attucks in order to keep us under the Conjure spell. It's the same as the continuation of the ancient spell of Kingu that's put us in this Kali Yuga. When you break one, you break them all. It's cycles within cycles, and if you don't never break out the cycles, you're stuck in an infinity loop, forever repeating the same bullshit over and over until you get it right. The exit from the infinity loop is where the pieces all meet in the middle, on both sides. It's an 8 on this side. 6 over the 9 makes an 8. 69 is balance. This is why they say he stood on Pisces and Vesica Pisces. It's the same thing, 2 water signs. One is a crab and one is 2 fish. And the crab is a crip. Unless he a crip on the flip, then he's a Pyru. with the C on the side. It's 2 tribal knocks in the code that we have to figure out. And all it is, the fish is, I will make you fisher of men. Well, you first got to make me a fish hook. So King James bent the I into a J to conceal who Isis was, so we'll be perpetually confused. Because if you straighten out the J, it's going to go right back to Isis. That means it's going to be returned back to mama. So you teach a man to fish, and he can eat for a lifetime. I'm a fishing motherfucker. My mama taught me to fish at an early age. The ship narrative doesn't make sense. The slave ship narrative is it defies all logic. They said we was packed in the hull of the ship like sardines, man to man, foot to head. Right? And the construction that they was using for them wooden ships back then, that's a gas chamber in 2 days. You got to remember, you got 9 seafaring people on the ocean. What happened to you when you get seasick? Don't you get nauseous?
Oh, absolutely.
So that means you're going to be throwing up. So it's going to be vomit. Going to be full of vomit down there because there's a whole bunch of people that's not seafaring. Right? Then, to take it a step further, you're going to have bathrooms. Ain't no bathrooms.
Same question.
Where they shitting and pissing at? Back then, they used to shit on something called the poop deck. And this is where you get your term swab the deck. That means go clean the bathroom, motherfucker. There's shit everywhere. But if you got that many people shackled and chained, you can't run bathroom breaks enough for everybody to get relief. So it's going to be a whole lot of buildup of fecal matter and urine in the hull of the ship. Anybody that didn't smell hot piss know that ammonia going to be kicking. You ever smell a bottle of ammonia?
Yes.
Okay, imagine that shit everywhere. It's a gas chamber. This is supposed to be a 90-day journey. It's only a 2-week journey from Europe to New York. Y'all got to pay attention.
Right.
It's a 2-week journey from Europe to New York. It's a 90-day journey from Africa to the islands, where they call the Middle Passage.
In the 1500s.
That don't make no fucking sense. That's a convenient story to separate your identity away from the land. It's more likely that the people on the slave ship died off than the people from the land died off. Basic logistics and basic critical thinking would tell you that. If we in the open air, they in the closed chamber. It's a difference. Right? So some of us probably did die off from the diseases that the Europeans brought.
They died off on this land. Why not?
We still dying from shit that they brought. Why we ain't stopped dying from the shit that they brought if we still here? I'm Mississippi clay dirt walking. I know where I'm from. My roots go right down that Mississippi River. Mississippi red clay dirt walking. You can smear me with it, and if you didn't know that I was smeared with it, you wouldn't even know I had dirt on me. I know where I'm from. It's not a secret. And the earth tells me where I'm from by the resonance of what we call the nativity. The nativity of the Christ. The anointing oils. The oils are in the ground that's telling us where we come from. But we want to go with the narratives that other people tell us who we is rather than following what our ancestors told us. Here's the thing, go to the roots. Fiddler is telling the people when Kunta Kinte get there, this is the African Guinea nigga. See, we don't know nothing about no Africans. We was already here. Why is this in the slave movie? Why is this fiddler saying we don't know nothing about no Africans?
I remember that too.
Right? So they telling you, but they still shrouded in a fairy tale. So we don't have a personal issue with Africans.
No.
Because they got done the same way we did. But I can tell you this, in the 1800s, they took some of us and set up a whole nation over there called Liberia.
Liberia, I knew you was gonna say it. You better talk. You better talk.
So we know they took us over there. And we know that all of the Africans that I didn't talk to, none of them have it in their historical record of mass amounts of people being extracted from the land. It don't exist. But what you do have is 10 to 12 here and there being snatched up by Arab slave traders before they rally the troops. Right? That's been going on long before the slave trade. The Arabs started that shit, they financed it, and Europe carried it out. But we didn't know that the Europeans carrying it out looked like us, because they whitewashed them in the history books so we could always look at the paleface as the guilty culprit, when they just used the paleface to keep us out of institutions. So Big Mama said, don't worry about it. Bring them all over here, the ones they don't want, and we're going to educate them and send them in to overrun their institutions and put the secrets out in the open. So when Noble Drew Ali came, he gave them the green light. What happened? We had something called the spiritualist movement in the 1900s, where they was doing the rapping and tapping on the tables to tell us in the future what was going on in the past. So when we picked up hip hop, we started rapping and tapping on the tables and spitting the past out in the present. It's the old Conjure. That's from New Orleans. That's the whole rapping Conjure is a New Orleans based conjure from root magic in the deep woods of the motherfucking Louisiana bayou. That's where it come from with the old juke joints. This is where jazz come from, rock and roll, bluegrass, country music. It all come from that conjure because we always believed in putting the message on the drum. And all of them needed the drum, except for Scott Joplin. He used the piano because that's what they brought with them when they came from Europe. They didn't ever expect that we would be able to learn to master the piano and come up with our own music that made that classical music sound like shit. So Scott Joplin said, let me ever go at it. And they called it ragtime. And it was the birth of the music industry, selling his sheet music for a penny a page. And he wasn't getting a dime of it. Oh, sharecropper agreements. You created and we gonna capitalize on it. Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity with a key on the kite, and he didn't get fried. Make that shit make sense. Because he sure would have been fricassee. He would have been roast cracker. If that motherfucking lightning would have hit the key with that string on there. He forgot lightning followed the path of least resistance. The key becomes a conductor and the electricity shoot both ways up the string. And we supposed to believe that shit? The first automobiles being made over here, they credited to a paleface, but it was brothers who was already driving cars in the 1800s first. They the ones who was creating those crank up engines. They still got the flyers. You can find the flyers from the brothers' cars that was back then. They want us to not know who we is, but we always know our handiwork if we the salt of the earth. What do salt do to your food? Don't it balance out all the flavors? Okay, so What do we use to balance out the society? We use arts and entertainment. And this is how they brought the sharecropper agreement into the entertainment industry. So they can capitalize on the natural expression of the people and monetize that shit for themselves and their self-gain. We do have every race in the genome of the Dark Mother. Right. What we call races, they're not races. They tribal genetic types. Right. But the term race is applied to the game of the gods in trying to race to the conclusion of the closing of the age. So when we use in the races in terms like melding pot, one drop of blood, stuff like this, they're telling us in code what's taking place. So this takes us to what Bobby Hemmett calls the great debauchery, where the natural evolutionary process of humans was interrupted by scientists in the laboratory that caused genetic mutations. You're going to notice in about 20 years that mutations are going to start to decrease because all of those mutations now are under scrutiny by the mitochondria, who is the factor that clears up genetic defects in Y chromosomes and X chromosomes. But the Y chromosome specifically, because a lot of the defects came in riding on the Y chromosome based on what was done in the laboratory. They altered the genetic structure of humans to keep them perpetual slaves and never have a right to ascend to higher consciousness. What happens when they try to ascend to higher consciousness is the body begins to deteriorate and break down. Excuse me. A prime example is Stephen Hawking. He was only left brain. He never activated his right brain. Because his intellect was so high, he didn't have the right brain to offset the rapid firing of the neurons in the space of the silver liquid. The silver liquid is the liquid that your cerebral spinal fluid pump at birth. As you develop, you're supposed to develop into where you're pumping a right brain, left brain, simultaneous pump, and draws up what's called the sacred secretion from the root chakra all the way up to the brain. This in turns make the silver liquid become gold in color. And when it does that, the right brain, abstract creativity of the mother side of the brain, in the Queen's chamber sits the pineal gland that received the psychic impressions from source. So what they did in the laboratory with the people is turned off right brain reactivity by genetic splicing of the DNA. When they done that, now we are under a judgment from Prime Creator for violating the rules in the free will universe. The will of a group of people has been undermined by scientists in the laboratory that prevents them from natural rights of ascension. In the same text that tell us about this genetic defects, the Sumerian tablets, it also tells us that the remedy for the problem is to give them the blood of the gods. They ain't talking about the men, they're talking about the sisters. Because she is the genome corrective analysis comes through the mitochondria. But she first have to assess the genome. Right? And assessing the genome, when at the close of the age, you get the source codes in, they already came in, the women now holding the source codes that will correct all of the defects that was created in the laboratory. So now everybody will have the equal rights of ascension. And this is why they told us the Jesus story the way that they told it to us, because the blood of the Christ is the blood of the anointed, because Christ means anointed. And the anointed ones are the original dark mothers of the earth. So this is why all of these people are coming over here, because this is where source blood was at its highest potency on the planet. The tribes from this land. And we also had intermixed with the Asians and the Africans. So we already had their genetic codes too. Right? So now when the new people come, they need the drop of blood in order to break the cycles of the infinity loop. And this is the conquest of the great debauchery in the experiments done on people in laboratories that was repugnant to the Great Mother. There's stories written about it in hieroglyphics, right? And
do you believe that the birth of civilization, that humanity, humans or whatever, that they came from one place in one region?
It was spontaneous around the planet.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, the women have always been here. The men are the newest of the genders.
Yes.
Women used to produce with parthenogenesis until a collection of women decided to produce men as a counterbalance. Let's go to cut to the chase on the DNA test. The fine print say it's for entertainment purposes only.
Purposes only.
So the DNA test says for entertainment purposes only, right? So that means that whatever it is, if it's for entertainment purposes only, it can be altered to fit the narrative that they're using as the entertainment. It's like wrestling being the outcome is determined. It don't matter what happened in the match, the outcome is determined. So the 21andMe, if you go back to Henry Louis Gates, he told you when Oprah went to Africa, she said on the news broadcast that she was Zulu. His friend called him up while they was doing her DNA test. Since they making it up as they go anyway, this is literally what he said. Since we making it up as we go anyway, just make her Zulu. And when her DNA test came out, they found out she was Zulu. They got to tell you what they doing. They got to put it in the public domain so you can locate it, so that you can show what you're talking about when you tell people that it's an entertainment, and the entertainment is the slave narrative. To disassociate the people. It's the same with reparations. The only reparations we want is to get our shit back, because we back for everything they owe, but they just so happen to owe us everything. They won't have nothing to give us for reparations after that. Right? They all fabricated, built up on a legal fiction, a house of cards. And when you get the root card, the whole house comes tumbling down. Fruit of the poison tree doctrine and law. Right? They drew up those titles to the land because we didn't sell land no way. We didn't need no titles to the land. We already knew that the clan mothers governed the land and who settles where. And they had conventions. This is where you get your Congress from. Congress is a Congress of mayors. The mayors is town mothers. So they would go to a meeting once a year and they would say, okay, this chief got 2,000 followers, but he's still under this other chief's jurisdiction. We need his own town. So he was get appointed to plot of land to settle based upon the natural formation of the land. Your land is between this mountain, this line of trees, this river, and this row of rocks. That's your town. That's your land. You go take your 2,000 people, separate from the chief that you under, because y'all don't see eye to eye, to prevent warfare from uprising in the family. So then they go and get their allotment, and then the resources goes with them to facilitate a successful settlement. This is not what we was doing before Columbus came. We got to go back to what we was doing before the enemy came if we want our shit back. Because the enemy gave us a system and told us if we use his system, he'll fight for us. And the only thing he's been fighting is us. You can't fight for us and fight us at the same time. That don't even make sense. That's called an oxymoron. You can't fight for us and fight us at the same time. They call us dependent nations in the constitutional law. Outlaw tribes, savage tribes, and non-treaty tribes are all of the terms they use to describe the tribes that didn't want to play their game. But we have to use our system. We can't use their system. It's designed to keep us forever in slavery.
On these lands went over into that continent. So
Yep.
it's very possible that when they took the test, they, because now they're considered Africans.
But that's possible because they created a whole country called Liberia. But
Right.
they not telling people they from Liberia. They telling you from Sierra Leone, you from Ghana.
Right.
You from Somalia.
Nigeria.
They ain't telling nobody they from Sierra.
Gods.
I mean from Liberia, where we do have genetic links to. That just so conveniently to skip all the DNA tests.
Mhm. Because it's just they give you a part, but never can tell you how you connected. Like Dulcinea says, where's the person and the people that you are connected with? Not like a little portions, different portions.
Look,
Never connect to it.
if you know how DNA work, once you get past like 3 generations, you have too many ancestors to tie you down to one. It double every generation back. Your 2 parents had 4 parents. Your 4 grandparents had 8 parents. Them 8 parents had 16. It doubles as you go back. If you go back 100 years or 200 years, you talking about 64 to 100 and some ancestors. Which one is they talking about was the African?
Facts. I threw that in to try to help them a little bit, but I'm with you with it.
Right. So DNA don't work like that. The DNA that they read only expresses what they call a phenotype, a general descriptive appearance that's on a specific code of the DNA. And they assume because you have the same physical characteristics as somebody on the other side of the water that this will fit the narrative to disassociate them from the land. We ain't that dumb no more.
And
We used to be.
Yes.
We used to be, but we ain't that dumb no more. There's too many of us aware that we from over here because we feel it in our bones. We don't need nobody to tell us. The earth talk to us if we listen and tell us if we belong here. If we don't belong here, we get restless until we find where we belong. We're still going to always be tribes. Tribes mean families. We can always break up into extended family groups. It's just the nature of who we are. This is why when we started tribing up in the 60s and 70s, they started labeling the tribes as gangs because most people don't know gang mean tribe. Right? So we just need to first close down the old system, and nature will put us back in the proper structure as the tribal mothers step up and be recognized, and the families will begin to remember shit. They don't know why they remember it. We know everything already about the land. Talk to us, telling us what took place. But we have to get back into the energy where we receptive to the messages that the land is producing to tell us the whole story. The animals reenact the story, the trees. Like most of us, a high percent of us don't know that you used to be able to walk the treetops from Florida to damn near Texas without ever climbing down out of a tree, getting on the ground. But they chopped all the trees down because it was wartime. And they took all of the cypress trees out of Florida, which was the giant trees that covered the land of flowers. This is all researchable information. That was the side effect of the Gullah Wars. They started gator baiting our babies because we used to ride alligators and sick alligators on their ass in the bottom of the canopy on the ground in the swamp, and used to attack them from the trees in the top, and they didn't have a chance. So it was all derived out of warfare. The genetic information that they feeding us back from their DNA testing is all warfare. We can either win the war or we can choose to take sides with the enemy. Using a court system only gives them jurisdictional context to assert jurisdiction under the color of law. We don't need them for nothing. We don't need their courts, which was established, the first bar association was established in Savannah, Georgia, about 1863, 1864, by order of King George, to usurp the tribal courts. We still have tribal courts over here, but because we believe they more legitimate than we are, we only participate in their system. There's nothing they can do once we get back to our own culture. The land was used to facilitate farms, to produce foodstuffs, to take care of the family wherever they was at throughout the country. We used to ship food from Big Mama house to the villages. Well, we call them towns and cities now, right? But they were just little settlements of people. Some of them had castles, some of them had huge buildings, and some of them had small houses and huts, log cabins. But it was what we choose to do with our settlement, and that was part of us receiving settlements, is being able to control our own destiny. I think I understand what you're saying. So when you have the blood rights as a member of the royal families of the land, you become what's called a pretender to the throne. And your life work becomes the foundation that you build as you go on a campaign to alert the rest of the heirs on the land that you asserting your jurisdictional right to restore the land. And so the campaign is a process called the redemption process that we follow, where we use the oral tradition. This is why I use social media, because it's all time stamped and dated in archivable format for the purposes of public notices. So whatever I'm putting in the public domain, no matter whose show I'm on right now, I'm also asserting my rights to restore the land back to the original people, wherever they at on the land. It don't matter where you at, because once we get it back, the family will have family reunions again, centered around one of the grandmamas, what we would call big mamas. And they would set up the family trust, which is your family banking system, in order to allocate resources to the members of the family. And even the tribes that don't think from referring to them will receive a tribal rights back under our system that they were denied under the corporate fiction that was the interim government for the time of war. That's over with. They closed March the 1st. Right. So, well, that's the scheduled day of closing. They're supposed to have been closed. But they have no bill on the table to try to extend their legal fiction any longer than March the 1st. So we will be having a national Mardi Gras next year. Trump announced it as a 250-year celebration, right? Which takes us to February the 25th, and it's 25 on 2 flips, which is 2 quarters. 2 quarters is 50 flip. And you have 50 on each side. That's 200 which is the four-corner shuffle to put everything back in its proper order. There's balance on both sides. 2 quarters on this side, 2 quarters on that side, which turns out to be 4 sevens, which is 4 masters. So it's all about getting back to our own systems so that we can be self-determined and autonomous, and we can make all of those decisions at the leadership summits about who gonna settle where and how we gonna tribe up. We got the right to restore our cultural heritage any way we see fit without anybody's outside opinion even being given a fuck about. This is not about what they think or want us to do. It's about what we decide to do amongst ourselves at this point. We have to choose how we want to be as a people across the land.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
A lot of people's feelings is hurt because they believed for so long a thing was one way. And when you find out for the first time, damn, I got tricked. That's not the first thing that you feel, though. The first thing you feel is the anger and the resentment of the fact that you was tricked. Then the next thing that you feel is, I didn't mind finding out I was tricked, but why did it have to be this motherfucker to tell me? Because the person that they expect to see is not the person that appeared with the information to set them free. And so you don't look the part. They reject what you're saying as if you don't know what you're talking about.
I love that answer.
It's a response to cognitive dissonance in the negative.
It's almost.
But see, that's part of shadow work too, finding your self-identity. Can't nobody tell you who you is. If you let everybody tell you who you is, they creating your artificial ego for you.
That part.
Because your ego is the sum total of everything anybody told you about you that you believe without investigating to find out if it was true.
That's right.
Oh man, people disagreeing with me. I don't think everybody supposed to agree on everything all the time anyway, or we'd all be some fucking idiots. Only if you disagree and then you go to prove it wrong and you find out you prove it right, do you change your mind. Oh, I done been everything but a child of God.
Me too.
Right. And so,
I'm wrong because I asked the question.
Look, I feel like anybody got a right to feel and think however they want. That's their right. I just don't have to give a fuck. I never read that nowhere where because you don't like me, I have to be overly concerned about it. I don't care. I don't care. You're supposed to have your own perspective of your life, right? It just so happens that most people believe they have their own perspective, but they following some dogmatic pursuit somebody else gave them. I'm not following dogma.
Nisha had a question for you.
I'm following what's in my heart. My heart told me where I belong. Period. So they running into the paper genocidal construct where they reclassified us under fictitious terms and alternate definitions of who we are as a people. So we would always disassociate who we are from the land. I know where my parents is from. I know what tribes are from those lands. So I don't care what they say. I know my history because my mom and my daddy told me my history over my lifetime, and my aunties and my uncles. They told all of the stories of the family that allowed me to reach back generations of information through the stories that they would tell. I don't need a DNA test to prove who I am. I said who I was. That's proof for me. It don't have to be proof for somebody else. When I tell a person I'm Mississippi clay dirt walking, that's because my people come from Mississippi. And I got a strong connection to the land in Mississippi. And my father's Canton, Mississippi. My mother's from Magnolia, Macomb, Mississippi. Most of those towns, Tylertown to Macomb, is built on my grandfather's actual own settlement. They carved it up and built cities on his land. I know who Hezekiah Johns was. So when they don't know who their ancestors was, they can't tie back in to the information because they disregard the word of mouth for the paperwork of the educational or miseducation system. So I don't follow that. I follow what my elders and my ancestors told me that's crossed over now while they was in the physical form, more so than what's written in the book. Africa was created by the Berlin Conference.
But the continent was there, but it wasn't called Africa. We've always, and I hope people understand, we've always been a tribal people. But these statuses and names through invasions and conquering and all this has been put on in different places.
Look, you remember earlier I said on the East Coast, we were marrying between the royal families of Africa for thousands of years. That landmass has always done trade with the tribes over here.
Okay.
We kept a lot of the African cultural traditions in the Gullah Geechee community because they the descendants of amalgamation of original people from this land and the people they did trade with from Africa. Some of the ones that we called Native Americans that was on the West Coast was due to us, the original tribes, amalgamating with the tribes that was from Asia when we did West Coast trade across the Pacific. If you don't know the pattern and the path that the enemy took when he got here, he will confuse you about these details. But the Chinese and the Japanese have a record of doing trade with the tribes over here and bringing brides from over there to over here. It's in their records. So we don't need the records from the settlers because we can go to China and get their records and they would gladly produce them.
How long has it been called Africa, Rod? Do you know that?
It was at the Berlin Conference. I think it was like 1780 something.
Right. But when the full continent was called Africa, was now in the 1800s.
Right. So at first, Africa was a region in the northern part of Al-Maghrib. It was only a region. Because of the war we was fighting against people from Al-Maghrib, and we go into this Conjure war with them, they named the whole continent Africa in the Berlin Conference because that's when Ifraq in Arabic, they divided Ifraq. They divided up the land. They divided up the land in the Berlin Conference, right? We didn't call it Africa. Over here, we used to refer to the land as the Afar Inca.
Okay.
The Afar Inca is a homonym for Africa. So we knew we called it Afar Inca, and we knew we had trade with people from over there as proven by Mansa Musa, right? And that his brother found it so heavenly over here amongst our women, he didn't want to go home. And he brought his spear of rulership to this land and presented it to the big mama over here.
But I'm hoping people, excuse me for interrupting, I'm hoping people are hearing you, that there's always been a connection.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, people are saying, like someone just said, that my great grandparents, it was called Africa at the time. Well,
because look, they wasn't, but great grandparents back is just when they named it that. They would have said they tried. They would have identified. And over there right now, the only time they identify themselves outside their tribe is when they're attaching it to the modern terminology for their country. Otherwise, if they talking to each other, they identify their tribe to each other. They know each other by tribes. But when they go out into the world, they have to use what the rest of the world has accepted as the norm. So they identify a tribe from this country. Right? They don't identify themselves as Africans, even because they're going to tell you they Nigerian. They're going to tell you they from Swahili. I mean, from Tobago or Togo.
Of course, yeah. Even
Algeria, Kenya. They're not going to say they Africans. So Africa is a broad contextual catch term to list every tribe over there. They don't agree with each other about their tribal origin, but each tribe is in a country they forced to accept by settlers, colonizers. They didn't divide the land up. They told us when they divided it up at the Berlin Conference, which made the Spanish-speaking Arabs and the Arab-speaking peoples that was in the conference call it Ifrak, the divided lands that was divided up in the Berlin Conference. You hear people talking about it was called Al-Qiwalan. That means the land before. Before what? It wasn't called, that's an Arabic term. So it must have been the land before the Arabs came. Or was it when the Arabs came before the Spanish came? What do it mean? What is it in reference to? Because the culture over there is very similar to the culture over here. When we name something, we name it based off of a trait or characteristic. Right? So what is it the land before? They calling it that now using the Arabic tongue to refer to the land was there before the settlers came, but we don't know their culture. So we assume that that's the accepted name of all of the tribes over there. Old maps got Sudan wrote across them and some of them got the Greek Ethiops written across it. That's Ethiopia and Sudan, which has been rendered only to two countries now. But at one time, the map had that scrawl, the navigator scrawled that across there, not me. Look, I never seen the person's DNA test say more.
Or Indian.
Oh, well, I've seen Indian on DNA tests.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, but I've never, not one time ever seen more on a DNA test.
I've seen Native American. I have never seen Indian.
Yeah, it's normally Native American / Indian.
Oh, okay. Is that what you Nisha, or was it just Native American?
No, what it said was indigenous. That's the indigenous.
Mm-hmm. So it probably depends on where you're getting the test from too. And then remember, it's for entertainment purposes, so they can alter the designations. If too many of us becoming aware, they'll alter the designation and change the meaning. Yep. It's for entertainment purposes only.
Say that again. They'll alter what? Say it again.
They'll alter the designation and change the definition.
Okay, so they're going to alter it when?
When they feel like it, because it's for entertainment purposes only. It's at their discretion. But as soon as we become hip to their games, then that's when they start trying to move pieces around. When they call us all those different terms, that's called a razzle-dazzle. Noble Drew Ali said, man, is truth and falsehood strangely mixed. What is he talking about? All DNA tests is controlled from a central source because they got to go to what they call a data information bank.
I'm going to disagree on that one.
Ask yourself, where is the Africans getting the genome codes for the ones that's native and organic to this land? Where is they getting the genetic codes to the ones from Asia, from Australia, from New Zealand? All of this is in a central database. The central database is a supercomputer located in Geneva, Switzerland. This is where all of your internet connections feed to. This giant supercomputer is where it's the source for AI. It's called HAL 366. But it's really IBM. If you look at the words, they just move down the word. HAL is HAL, HIABLM, IBM. It's a code. They don't want us to know all of that, all of the educational data that's been controlled by colonists is still controlled until we take control of the entire system. If we don't take control of the system, what they say is the order of the day, what they say is the law, what they say is the rules, because they the ones that we responsible to get rid of. Their systems, the colorable law systems. When you start talking about DNA, there's a book called Mendelian Inheritance in Man that gives you the whole descriptive breakdown of the DNA, what genome holds what trait. It's all in the central database. All of the universities of the world is connected into a central database. So they might use a different way of testing. Instead of a swab of the mouth, they might use skin scrape. But when you go back to getting to the data that they're using, they have to have all of the genetic codes of the earth if they're going to tell you from a different part of the earth from over there. Otherwise, they would only have a collection of African DNA of Africans in Africa. So they have to branch out and get the codes that tells you whose DNA is what. And it's all for entertainment purposes. This is the game of the gods, where deception is overcome. It is because it's a puzzle. It's a razzle-dazzle play. Look, David Copperfield gonna make a jet disappear in Vegas. We going to see it. Everybody on the way to go see David Copperfield illusion of making the jet disappear. See on the sign that they're calling David Copperfield the greatest illusionist ever known. And when we get there, we say, I'm not going to let him trick me of making me think the airplane disappear. Soon as he make the airplane disappear, we forget that he's the greatest illusionist in the world. And we start saying, how the hell he make that plane disappear? It was still just an illusion. And now we trying to figure out how he did it. He had to make that plane disappear. It was an illusion. He told you that. They told us in Morals and Dogma that they was going to give us a whole lot of dogma to override our moral compass that's going to tell us where to be located on the land. They gave us the whole layout of the playout of their entire system in Morals and Dogma and in Protocols of Zion. The Protocols of Zion told us exactly how they was going to keep us conquered. They was going to control economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.
And it happened.
And they the ones been feeding us all the doctrinal information on those subjects since they've been here. So of course, when we start getting into the health arena, which I call the 10th one, they're going to control that narrative too. That's why pharmaceutical companies write all of the medical books, finance all of the medical institutions. They're not working for us. If they ain't working for us, who the fuck they working for? It's a plutocracy. It's a big old monopoly game in the game of the gods. I'm just telling y'all how the game plays so y'all can see through their bullshit. Right? The Flying Kings landed on the chessboard. But they ain't know where they can go because it's the queen stationed in every corner. And the queen run the chessboard. She can move in ways that the rest of the pieces can't move.
It's the same way they did with religion.
Religion was one of their tools.
One of their tools. Same thing.
It's fall right under that category. Thanks. Shout out to Dr. Neely Fuller for making it clear.
And we're all being played like a piece on a chessboard or a checkerboard or something. We're just being played.
So the fact that we intermarried with people from Africa on the Eastern Shoreboard for thousands of years, many of the people from the Eastern Shoreboard genetic memory gonna call them back to Africa. But all of us is not gonna be called back to Africa through genetic memory. Only the ones who have to be over there to activate a birthright. Now, some of us is gonna be deceived over there and become food for wolves, or I should say hyenas. Because the false narrative, if you don't rise above that bullshit, you would be led anywhere in the world, just like Jim Jones led all them people to Guyana and had them drinking the coffee or the Kool-Aid, right? Because they had no self-identity because they was absorbed in the doctrine of the dogma of the church. So the leader of the church lead them wherever he want to lead them, straight to their own destruction. It's the same thing. You can repatriate, because a lot of people from Haitian descent is starting to wake up and feel like they need to be in Haiti, but they don't know why, because they don't know they Haitian. Haiti calling her babies back home to rebuild Haiti. Jamaica calling her babies back home to rebuild Jamaica. St. Lucia and St. Croix is calling their babies back home to rebuild. Puerto Rico and Dominica is doing the same. But we don't understand what's taking place. And a lot of the people that's being drawn back to their homelands at this time don't know that that's where they're supposed to be at the close of the age. So some of them are being deceived over there, but some of them is going because they need to get their ass back to Africa to help them reclaim their shit. I don't got no problem with nobody from Africa. They can be unapologetically African as they want, and I'm going to be unapologetically organic to this land. That's all. It's not a conflict to me. It's only a conflict to the people that want me to feel like I'm from where they think they from. Whether they right or whether they wrong is not my concern. I am aware of where I'm from. So since I'm aware, I'm going to pretend that I don't hear none of their nonsense, and I'm going to pursue what is rightfully ours as a people by exercising my blood and my right to do so. And the more clans that can benefit, the better it is for the collective. So Africa is rebuilding Africa. If we ain't watching, we don't see them reclaiming their shit, kicking colonizing powers out, closing down the mines where they've been stealing their resources and not benefiting the people of the land. All that shit coming to an end globally. And the people that's being drawn to their land need to go home. I don't care where they from. I'm at home. But the other people that need to go home is being called home by their land. They need to go. I don't care whether it's China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. I don't give a fuck if it's Ethiopia, if it's Scandinavia. When the land call your ass, you better move, or you're going to be food for the sharks. That's all. It's not nothing personal. This has to be done. Everything has to be restored back to balance for the new age to take full effect. And the benefits of the new age is a golden era, an era where we have technology unseen in thousands of years. They make us think it's new, but it ain't none of this shit new. Ain't nothing new under the sun. We did all of this stuff we doing before. We going through all of the struggles we going through before, except before we didn't never successfully close the age, so we were stuck in the infinity loop. So we had to keep doing it over and over till we get it right. And they wouldn't let me play none of the reindeer games until now. So now I'm just gonna lead y'all to the promised land.
Okay, last question. Right. What are your thoughts about interracial dating?
I don't care who you date.
Mm-hmm.
Date who you want to date. Because now, with the one drop of blood doctrine being taken full effect, We all related whether we want to be or not. All the mulattoes that so-called left the plantation, where they go? They ain't go with us. Only a handful of them went with us. The rest of them went and married into somebody else. But they still got their drop of blood. Everybody got the right to ascend. Anybody that don't belong here won't be here because the earth gonna turn them off. So I don't care what you do. So they found bones up around Philadelphia that's older than this, like 80,000 years old. They found them in Florida. All over the land, they've been finding bones that's older than bones that they've recovered from Africa, except for Lucy. Humans is primates.
Humans are primates?
Yeah, based on genetic definition of a primate.
Based on the status that they put us in with primates?
Based on the description, okay, so you got mammals, and then the mammals is broke up into types, and then they broke up into types.
Oh.
Right? And on the mammalian hominids are under the classification of primate.
Well, if you believe in that, then you're sure you do not believe in out of Africa theory, because all that comes together.
Are you talking about the evolution from a monkey to a human?
Yeah.
I don't believe that shit.
Oh, okay, well, that's pretty much what they're saying the primate stuff is like.
No. Look, at different times, you have different upgrades to the genome. As these upgrades take hold, it alters the genome of the old species and produce a new species. It doesn't continue because the genome is no longer functional in the new system. So the current primates, though we have genetic similarities, they still not the same species. That's why we can't have sex with a chimpanzee and make a baby.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do some laboratory shenanigans to make it happen.
Why put us in the same category? Why can't humans have their own category?
They do. When you say human, you just gave us our own category.
Right, but when it's labeled out, it's like the monkeys, the gorillas, the chimpanzees.
All primate really is a hominid that uses his hands and his feet and has hair. That's it. There ain't nothing else to make it more distinctive or separate from what we is. It's just a classification for the understanding of the differences in the species across the spectrum, right? It's just like light. Yellow light is yellow light and red light is red light. But when you put all of the spectrum of lights together, you get a whole different kind of light. It don't mean that one light don't exist. It just means that when you get the whole spectrum, they're not the same as the individual pieces of the light spectrum. So look, humans didn't always stay permanently in human form during the duration of their life until they collapsed the fourth dimension into the third and locked us into the avatar. And when
go into it, ride, because go ride.
We used to incarnate. We used to use the energy in the atoms from the surrounding area to create the avatar at will and at random. The same way women used to produce parthenogenically, but over time that changed with the advent of men. If you look at the Y chromosome under electron microscope, it's just a mutated X that lost about 40% of its material. So it produces the masculine gender. This just to institute the law of opposites in the realm so we can figure out how to get out of the infinity loop. So we can go into the next age, the age of Aquarius.
I'm sorry, Rod, go ahead.
So whatever our avatars is now, we used to take on different forms when we incarnate. That's why they used to call us shapeshifters. It wasn't that we were shapeshifted. It was the function that you was coming here to perform. You took on an avatar that gave you the tools to best deal with the situation according to the environment around it. So you didn't always incarnate in what looked like a human. Sometimes you came back 90 feet tall. Sometimes you came back smaller than an ant. But it depended on what you was doing as one of the guys that determined how you would manifest yourself in the 3D realm. It was just some scientists that understood how the spirit worked that figured out if they opened a portal between dimensions, they could trap us in an infinity loop and enslave us. Because they didn't think we would ever figure it out.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you believe in reincarnation of some sort?
I don't believe in it, I know, because I remember multiple past lives.
Okay. Sound like Zodiac.
And
Right. But all it is this how reincarnation works.
Okay.
The genetic sequence in your genome will align to allow the frequency to match the frequency of you at a prior time. Because it's like tuning a radio. When the genome aligns to the combination that allows your frequency in, that's when you come back into the physical realm. It's not that you're a different person, it's that your energy field is activated in a different point in time for you to add your spirit energy to the physical realm. Nationality is a Admiralty jurisdiction designation. A ship has a nationality. I'm superior to a ship as a sovereign. If a ship has a nationality and you on par with the ship, it's only one way possible. You have to assume a straw man position so that you can do business as a vessel on the high seas, your nationality. We are ascending beyond nationality now to sovereignty, which makes nationality no longer the order of the day. It becomes obsolete. It's expired. That contract no longer is valid. 100 years ago, you would have had to assume a nationality in order to do business on the land with the corporation. So nationality 100 years ago was the order of the day in order to get us out of the economic rut we was in. We don't need none of that shit now. We don't need a nationality. We don't need a citizenship. We don't need a government. So now we have to grow beyond the national box in order to liberate ourselves into our sovereign capacity. Record of us being transported from one part of our land to another part of our land so they could tell us that we foreign to the entirety of the land. They got this recorded. That's why I say you could pull it up. Slaves transported from the north to the south.
There you go.
Well, remember, they say that the north was non-slave holding and the south held slaves.
That's not true.
So how are you transporting slaves from the north to the south? You have to be transporting POWs you caught in the north to the south. But do whatever story you tell them, our ancestral information, data, always leaks out in the detail. Oral tradition. Pay attention to that because we didn't write. We didn't go by the written record. We went by the spoken word. This is why we had griots. Also, the reason why I brought up him navigating the land, because they're describing the native, but they telling us he's from Sierra Leone. He's a foreigner, but he's performing as if he's familiar with the territory he's currently on. That's the description of the native. That's why I asked you, where'd you get Seminole from? And you say, I wrote it. Because when the enemies tell us the story of the Gullah Wars, they call us Seminoles to control the narrative that runaway slaves joined on to the tribes and we fought alongside the tribe as runaway slaves, but we was chiefs the whole time, bringing our armies to come fight in the Gullah Wars to give aid and assistance to the distressed tribes that we was called. The call didn't come from Florida. The call came from the Carolinas. But we all fought the war in Florida to try to stop the advance of the Spaniard. The conquistadors is who we was fighting in Florida. And that's how we got to be called Seminoles.
Right. But Rob, understand.
So
that's Tony,
the term Cherokee, right? If you go to Google and type up etymology of Cherokee, it's going to tell you the tribes that was classified as an exonym. They didn't name themselves Cherokee. Invaders named them Cherokee.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So what I'm showing you is they gave us a narrative, and then their universities taught it as the facts.
Right.
The purpose of the narrative was to separate the people and the land, so we would never reclaim the land from the invaders. The invaders that did it were Spaniards. These invaders brought us their Spanish conquistador culture and their English culture.
Exactly.
They was a band of royal families from Europe, across Europe, Frenchmen, Dutch, Portuguese, but they was all melanated. The servants they brought originally with them was paleface. And the slaves that they caught up in the wars they had with Mongols, Huns, and Vedics.
Right.
These people was put into villages over in Europe, but when they brought them over here as their servants, they are now a single group of people through marrying who was in the village. They bring them over here and send them to Indian school as children. And this is how they systematically replaced us. And this is why the razzle dazzle with the names. The names is to confuse us to our identity as being from this land, the same as reparations is being used, because if you accept reparations, you accept the fact that you ain't from this land. Therefore, whatever the wealth of the land is, you have no stake in it. It's systematic, it's military, and it's cultural warfare. Dr. John Henry Clark told us that these people has been fighting a war on our culture. It's just so happened that we are also part of the culture, the bucket compared to what we owe.
I agree.
The wealth of the people of the land far exceed anything they can muster up to give us reparations. They notice they need you to claim somewhere other than the Americas. So now, whatever the turnaround bring the tribes from over here, you accepted reparations and said it had nothing to do with you. It's taking the dollar so that you can forego 100 million. It's a deceptive fraud in our face, so that we there's no way they can give us reparations because they owe us everything already. There's nothing they can give us to reparate that.
No,
they can't repair that. Only thing they can do is give us what's rightfully ours, and they gonna be broke. Look, if you go and investigate, they had no right to trade in our resources. They could only stockpile and borrow money against them. They've been floating. Listen, they've been floating their legal fiction economy off money borrowed against our asset.
Exactly.
The national debt is owed to the tribes.
That's right.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
That's right.
Right. So that is just to facilitate government. But we was wealthy before they came.
You probably
so
right.
We just trying to get the land and the wealth of the land back, and they trying to give you reparations to forego that.
Okay, I got you. Right. I got you.
Instead of taking what you rightfully deserve and what's rightfully yours, I'm gonna give you a payout so that when anybody come for what's rightfully yours, I already paid you. You've been reparated. To add to that, when you review all of the people that the United States government gave reparations to, there's a common denominator. All of them tied back to a operational corporate government somewhere in the world. right? This government had a lobbying body that fought for their people that was in the Americas to receive the reparations payout. The prime example was the Japanese that was held in internment camps during World War II. As part of the settlement of World War II, the peace treaty, they gave reparations to those, not just Japanese, they had some Chinese mistaken as Japanese in those internment camps too. But they didn't give them reparations. They only gave the Japanese reparations because it was part of a negotiated contract between two corporations to settle a war. We talking about the reparations. First of all, their money is legal fiction. It's fiat. That means they said it has value. Ever since 1933, when they took us off the gold standard, their money has no value.
Right.
It's only valuable as long as they can use it to trade oil.
Right.
Well, the BRICS nations then damned them on that dollar. So now their reparative dollars have no value to the tribes. Our wealth is tied to the land. Give us what's rightfully ours, and you can take your monopoly money and wipe your ass with it. But if you accept the monopoly money, what they are in turn saying is, I'm from another land and I got a lobbying body that represents me on that land in the treaty negotiations to give me a reparations for the conditions you put me in. My question becomes, if you're going to receive reparations, which African nation that you say you came from has a lobbying body lobbying to get you your reparations? The only way, because the reparations is tied to your African slave trade identity. It's not tied to your indigenous status to the land. Right, because they was never supposed to cross the Appalachians to begin with.
Exactly.
It was the Lewis and Clark expedition that crossed them over into the West. It was the Mesoamerican War that gave them control of California down to Texas.
Right.
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 Notice there was a war.
Right.
The land that they held in treaty is the result of the resolution of a war. All this stuff is to disassociate the people from the land.
Yeah.
If we reclaim the land back, all of them, we was in a warlock.
Right.
This is what put us in poverty.
Right? You know,
The warlock, we have to remember how they got the land from those tribes in the South.
I'm glad
our people spoke mostly tribal tongue in the South during the 1800s. We knew to the language called English, and we totally ignorant to the language called legalese. They draw what's called the Sharecropper Agreement. The Sharecropper Agreement was being enforced as a squatter right. Right? So they come in and they lend the farmer money.
Right. Not just that, tools.
And when they couldn't pay the money back, they took the land.
They didn't make
No,
right.
Not yet. First, they'll give them a good crop. They'll let them get a good crop. This make them believe that the one holding the agreement with them is honorable and will cover what they said, and they will accept the split on the back end for the crop. Next year, the crops go in, beautiful crops all across the field. 3 a.m., all of the crops on fucking fire.
Damn, that's typical of them.
Next year roll around. Don't worry about the fire last year. We'll just roll it into next year's payment. That's how we got the plantations. Sweetheart swindles. The plantations wasn't a big house. It was Big Mama house.
Mm-hmm.
Until this new slickster from Europe rolled in, married her, and poisoned her to death. The tribes, when they do that, that's only to give it back to the daughters of the father whose children it was. They didn't take the land for selfishness. They tried to keep the land in the family at all costs.
Oh, they do that in Africa. I'm sorry.
Look, so what they doing, who is allowed to levy the tax on the land?
Who's allowed to levy the tax?
You have to be the one that's holding the title to the land.
Yeah. The deed.
You can't tax a land that's not under some kind of title treaty.
Right. Oh, okay.
This is the law of the landlords. The landlords came from Europe. They didn't come from over here.
Mhm.
And they use barristers to do their bookkeeping.
They're doing it right now.
They've been doing it the whole time.
Right
This
now.
This is what I'm trying to get us to see. All of this Admiralty jurisdiction, nationality is the law of the flag, the law of the high seas. This is why a ship has a nationality, and all of the people have to have a nationality. Disregard your,
Really,
as long as you paying taxes on a piece of property, you're not the rightful owner.
that's what
You're the renter, you're the tenant. This is part of the squatter rights. This is what they use in the squatter rights in the treaties.
Yeah, man.
Look, the only reason why, listen, go back to Martin Luther King explaining to us how they brought the peasantry from Europe and undergird them with a financial floor to mechanize their firms. Just because this is just the floor is still on top of the land. So the whole time they can use the land. Some of the farmers are now being paid not to farm, been doing it for over 100 years. I got you all this farmland, but I'm gonna pay you not to farm nothing. Right? That's because they need to control the output of the food resource. So all of this goes back to the eminent domain of the squatter right for the squatters to secure a piece of land.
That's what I
from the landlords who came from Europe. And the landlords is operating under false pretenses of being our government under the color of law. That's not us. The person asked the question, how do you claim your land back when it's communities on them? We work with the community. We don't displace people in our culture. We work with the people that's in the community to restructure the community and allocate resources. When the big mamas is back in charge, it's about making sure everybody got food, clothing, and shelter.
Right.
It ain't got nothing to do with I'm gonna bully you off the land because I don't think you're supposed to be here. It's about the return of the resources back to the people from a government that sucked all of the people's resources out.
We don't stick together.
This is the crystal globe. We looking at have and have nots in the New World Order. We chose not to be the have nots, so we took it all. By blood and by right. We was born with the right to restore the balance back to the people and the lands.
And
all we got to do is put Big Mama back on her seat and go on about our business. Everything will fall in place according to the laws of nature. These contracts, that's what they use to enforce their jurisdictional authority to govern what you do on your land. They make you sign an adhesion contract. Most people don't know when they do their mortgage contract that they sign in the agreement to follow what's the homeowners association of the area. They ain't gonna tell you if you don't read it for yourself, right? They're not gonna tell you what you have, why you gotta pay taxes. They gonna tell you it's to supply the services of the local government. That's supposed to be paid from out of DC and the capital of the state. Not supposed to be paid for by the resident. But remember, the landlords is the ones who's issuing these patents for squatter rights, disregarding the tribal lands where our ancestors is actually buried at. This is making them sacred lands, and they don't qualify under none of the treaties. The sacred lands do not qualify for none of the treaties. And we got ancestors buried from coast to coast. So they are asserting their jurisdictional authority based on treaties and based on contracts they making with individuals. It has nothing to do with them having the proper jurisdiction. It has something to do with them having us go along to get along without telling us that we going along to get along.
Mm-hmm.
It's all deception at its finest. We can argue the particulars of law
to 100%,
right? But we still need to know what they use in the law to do to the people who's rightful heirs to the land. And they using what they call in the law to usurp the land law, the common law, the law of the people on the land of the tribes. All tribes west of the Appalachians are called in law dependent tribal nations. They call outlaw tribes, and they call belligerent tribes. Why do they call us this? Because we never signed none of their contracts because we never agreed. They only have a contract with 5 civilized tribes for a small portion of the Virginia territory, is what it was called at the time. They don't got no contracts to make that shit up as they go. And then as they make it up, we end up believing they are legitimate government. So we support their takeover and shenanigans to get us to surrender the land. No tribal chief from this land believes in selling land, because to us it's like selling your mama and your children, and we don't believe in that.
Yeah.
The people that came over here sold their mama to leave and sold their children when they got here.
Yeah.
And that was called the Ottawa Territory, and it was a conglomeration of tribes from all through what they call it the Northwest Territory. But we called it Ottawa Territory, and it was a group of tribes that was belligerent to the settlers crossing the Appalachians, interfering with the inland, what became later known as the Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah.
The protectorate agreement of the French that they sold to the English was to make sure nobody crossed the Appalachians and went into, this is why you bring up King George, because they was not supposed to cross the Appalachians and go into what they called back then Indian territory or Bigfoot country, where them niggas with them big ass feet be stomping you across your neck.
Oh, come on now. My feet ain't
so when they telling us the stories, they telling us we mythical creatures, we werewolves. No, we not werewolves. We just werewolf pelts when we fucking you up. Right? We wear the pelts of the jackal, or what we call over here the coyote. Right? So they came over as bloodsuckers. They vampires. We was already here, and they say we look like kin, so they call us lichens. And they tell us it's a story called Twilight. It's just a love story between a little pink girl and a little pink boy. But the native tribe turning into werewolves in the movie, and the pink motherfucker come from Europe to marry the little chick, because she got the blood from both tribes, the European tribe and the American tribes. So he gonna try to marry her so they can have this special baby. This is a story is redundant.
Yeah.
It's the same shit over and over. Your old Jesus Christ story reworked. Born of the blood of the Jews, but they murdered his ass at the hands of the Romans. It's the same fucking story.
Yeah.
They just dress it up in a different suit. It's the same goddamn lie. It's just a well-dressed lie now. It was dressed up to look like a superhero.
Yeah.
Remember, the paleface came for a drop of blood.
They always hurt me to my feelings.
Right? J. Rogers in Section Race and Nature Knows No Color line say, and Superman and Man say, that there was no self-respect in one of us that would touch one of them, and there was none of them that would touch one of us. How do you get one of us to get with one of them? You got to tell us we can't do it. You got to make us rebel against the order of the day. They had no beauty standard, but they can only develop one once they get their drop of blood, because their genetics doesn't allow for it. This is why they wore the corset dresses with the fox fanny. Yeah, Nature Knows No Color line. He's telling you that when they came over here, we wouldn't mix with them. We wouldn't touch them motherfuckers. Right? So when you force a people until you get to the mulatto stage and the octoroon stage, you can turn them loose on either side of the fence and they'll mix for you to get the drop of blood throughout the spectrum. This is what he was reading when he was showing you that we ain't like them motherfuckers and they ain't like us. but they have to get their drop of blood some kind of way. And they unleash the reign of terror to get it. And they was brought over here to keep us from ever getting into the institutions to get to the information. Right? So this is what he's telling you in the story that he was reading, is my man is describing how we perceive them, how they perceived us, and trying to figure out how to make us to perceive each other differently from two different sides of the world. Right? The snowman meet the sun man. Goddamn. Iceman Inheritance. They got to go through a catharsis to get that evil shit out their blood that was put into them in the laboratory. The catharsis look like racism. It looks like sexism. It looks like oppression until they get fed up with the shit their parents did. That one drop of blood take hold in their psyche. They ain't gonna like that shit. So now you're gonna see pale faces. What overdue all this? I'm gonna make the pale face tell you the truth. How he gonna do that? He gonna talk to that one drop of blood. And that one drop of blood, I don't care what vessel it's in, it's gonna respond to the chief. This is what the whole crucible of God, great melting pot story that they're telling us the whole time. They're telling us what they're doing. And we not paying it no attention because it sounds like a slick slogan from the government. It's not. This is why eugenics was created, to make it look like they wanted to genocide us, to force us to accept some people we wouldn't accept. It's reverse psychology used at its maximum potential in a sociological instead of an individual capacity. I don't give a fuck about none of that shit no more. Now I'm trying to get, I want my big mama back. Fuck the bullshit. Because when Big Mama come home and all of her daughters get their shit back, we good. We could figure out everything else at that point.
So when is that supposed to happen?
Now in real time. Yeah. It's going down real time right now. The process is processing.
Understand, Big Mama. This part of me, I'm trying to.
You might not be one of us.
So it takes to be one of us.
He's a Hebrew Israelite.
He might not be.
Why wouldn't you understand Big Mama, but you understand Big Papa?
He's a Hebrew Israelite. I mean, listen, there you go. That's the doctrine.
The return of Big Mama.
The restoring the matriarchal structure that the tribes operated on before the rogue patriarchs brought their Bible bullshit over here.
Mm-hmm. Paleolithic time.
It's just as simple as that. We say Big Mama because every clan called their tribal mother Big Mama.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like that. Mudia, Nana. Right? It just depends on who she was, but the tribal mother, we called them Big Mama.
God.
He directly described the nature of lions. But what's the nature of the gorilla?
Same thing. A female gorilla.
It's not the same thing. When a male gorilla take over, he don't kill none of the babies.
Well, I know
father them all. The reason why I pointed out the difference in the nature of the lion and the gorilla is the evolution of the masculine in the species. The evolved masculine understand that the nature of the feminine, she may have children when he meet her. And the evolved man is going to nurture and father them children like they his own. But the unevolved man is going to have an attitude with the children and become easily frustrated with them because they not his own. It's a difference. It's levels to this shit.
I understand, but we talking about gorillas or men, because you're saying the uninvolved.
The same way you matched up the lions, I'm just showing you that the difference in the two species. The human species is above all that shit. But we don't want to accept that reality yet. We ain't culturally mature enough again. We have to remature back into the evolved beings we were when we nurtured everything on the planet, including the lion and the gorilla. Earlier, one of the sisters mentioned their uncle had always surrounded himself with a group of women.
I was just getting ready to say that.
There's something else that happens when you surround yourself with a group of women. You live longer.
Most loyal people, most loyal soldiers.
Look, we ain't even
Never
got to that
worry.
part. I'm talking
Fact.
about the energetic difference,
That's a fact.
right? The mitochondrial support from multiple women allows the man to heal from some shit that he wouldn't have healed from without her.
Did
A
y'all
group
see
of
how
women, a group of balanced women are Tesla coils of healing mitochondrial resonance. This is metaphysical science, and the tribes was based on metaphysics. We move on the earth like the stars move in the sky.
See,
Wait, Apostle, let him finish.
yeah.
The
It's all
Hebrew is
energy.
out of you.
It's all energy and energy management, resource management. As the gods, we ain't supposed to be walking around here trying to pretend to be animals. We supposed to do God shit. So I'm not finna go pissing on every tree I walk past like a dog just because I'm a man. But a dog gonna piss on every tree he go past to make sure a person notices his territory. The most I'm gonna do is stake a totem pole.
Eventually he gonna
Right?
run out of piss.
If we gonna be gods, we gonna have to do some God shit. If we gonna be mortals, we gonna have to do some mortal shit. But the first thing we got to do is figure out the difference in the goddamn two. You can't call yourself a god, you don't do no God shit. You're just a mortal who aspire to godhood. But you have the potential to become the God as soon as you realize what it takes to ascend to that level. Everybody ain't on the same level. That's why information goes through trickle down. I might be able to tell one person something, and I could tell an entirely different person the same thing, and they both, one of them understand it, the other one don't. The one that don't can go talk to the other person I talked to, get the explanation, and it makes perfect sense to them, but it didn't make sense when I told it to them. But I told it to the person that explained it to them. So now you see that the information has to go through a trickle-down effect. We playing Plinko with the knowledge. We're just trying to get back to the balance of the nature and the human family by restoring the matriarch, because that's the natural structure of the human family, not because the women is better or not better than the man. Put the power where the power go, the machine run the way it's supposed to run, and we got heaven on earth. But if you keep the power where it don't belong, you're going to always have misery and suffering as a result of people inappropriately applying power to the wrong places at the wrong time, creating the wrong result. It's basic mathematics. Well, we all melanated. I know that much.
I think Comedian thinks there's a difference.
I don't think so.
Yeah, well,
We look, the George Washington challenge is a challenge between chiefs and 32-degree Scottish Rite Freemasons from England,
Right.
Spanish and French. This is what the George Washington challenge about. What side of the ocean you originate from?
that part.
That's the George Washington challenge. I didn't make that shit up. I just pulled it out the history books to show it to y'all.
Right.
It's the war between the two nappy head motherfuckers. The good had to suffer with the bad. And the pale face was the referee while he got his drop of blood in his reign of terror. We not the same people.
Mm.
Half the motherfuckers ain't got no soul. And you know the ones that ain't got no soul because they stuck on the same foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of righteous Moors over here. They are under Angel Bay. If they ain't under Angel Bay, then they're going to find out soon enough where the tribes stand with the dirty Moors, because they got all their names on the ledgers in the Moorish consulate, and the list of the dirt they did. That ain't my house to clean up. I'm just here to tell the people the story and where to find the information at.
Right.
right? So if you don't know what the George Washington challenge is, and you still barking nationality, you only half cocked. No, Drew Ali didn't say get a rudimentary Moorish education. He said get a good Moorish education. That means trace the motherfuckers back to their source. When they came out the Middle East from the Sinai mountains under the Babylonian captivity with their blood magic, sex magic, and money magic, moved across the northern portions of Africa, across the Iberian Peninsula, and moved into Italy and called themselves Etruscans. Then they changed their name again. They keep changing their name because they don't think we know how to track their dumb ass.
Right.
They tell us the stories. Half of them went up into settle in West Turkey and formed the Ottoman Empire, what they call the Byzantine kings, right? So we know the difference in the people. It's just that the ones that's the dirty Moors don't never want us to resolve the matter definitively. We ain't no goddamn Moors.
Sounds like the Horebs to me.
Moor is a catch term to encapsulate two separate groups of people under the same phenotypical identity for the purposes of a Conjure war.
I like that. I like that.
That's what it's all about. Feathers versus fezzes.
I never heard it like that before. I like that.
Right.
It's all in the imagery, in the iconography. They got the pictures of the Moors over in Europe eating the babies. They telling us the whole time why they kicking them out of Europe. You think they wasn't gonna eat babies when they got here? Oh, they just stopped eating babies when they got here and started trying to pretend to be us and carry themselves like we do. They don't have the discipline and the internal fortitude to be able to assimilate all of the monotheistic religions they brought over here with them. They can't even follow that shit. And we became more Christians than the Christians, more Muslim than the Muslims, and we wasn't none of that shit before 1492. And now niggas want to stand up and argue that we some goddamn shit that wasn't over here before Columbus came and fight you to the goddamn death because you know who you is and it don't agree with the narrative that the settlers and the colonizers is forcing down our goddamn throat, telling us we came from somewhere else.
And
How
we'll
the
have
fuck
no
all our
problem
ancestors know how to navigate the land if they ain't from here?
Interesting.
The fight for reparations is a distraction from all of the melanated people, no matter where they at.
Stop. Wait a minute. Hold on. Stay where we at. You're telling me that the fight for reparations can only be claimed by descendants of slaves. Is that correct? Yes or no?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the reparation, hold on, listen. The reparations program that's been rolled out to us is for the descendants of slaves.
Okay.
They have not rolled out a reparations for us to recover the land.
So
that didn't roll out from them.
Stay with me. Hold on. Stay with me. Let's keep it in buckets. Keep it in buckets. The fight for reparations is only for people who say that they're descendants for slaves. Yes or no?
Yeah, that's what the fight for reparations that we following is. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
That's the best question of the day, right? Because this is the reason why. The American Indian is not the aboriginals to the land. The American Indian is paper genocide and the aboriginals to the land. The American Indian can be anybody that was rolled in under the Dawes Act. That don't got nothing to do with us. Our way is we cannot defeat them using their system. Our ancestors left us a system of redemption that I've been following for 5 years, and it's been working. We don't see all of the benefits yet because we coming out of a hazy period of trying to understand what's going on. The only way we can get our shit back is to go back to the great law, and that overrides the Admiralty jurisdiction that's overlapping the land. All of that you see is these lands of demarcation that's establishing states is the legal fiction in operation on the land. The only way we can overthrow them is we have to go back to the old oral tradition of the tribes, put everything out in the open for the rest of the tribesmen and the clans people to see. And the more of us become aware, then their system will automatically start to deteriorate. It's scheduled to close March the 1st. So I don't see any way for them to resurrect that dead entity this time because there's not enough of us contracting with them anymore because we becoming aware. Once their system collapses, the tribal system, we have to go around the land having leadership summits and setting up new boundaries and removing all of the boundaries the settlers set. And this is how we get back to what's ours, by following our system and stop following the system of the color of law, which they gave us under a uniform commercial code. And that's why they wear uniforms, to look legitimate, even though they're illegitimate. When you learn more information, it allows you to do better than you were doing before. Right? So those people that they call it Native Americans, and they not from over here.
But they
was giving them titles by the government that don't belong over here either. So you got two left feet trying to do a right foot dance. We're getting tricked by the money.
I like that.
The money has no intrinsic value in and of itself. It's only tied to contracts. And they allowed these casinos to be built in order to circulate enough notes to maintain the artificial currency and to artificially float the government. The money is a fiat currency. It's not backed by anything. It should be backed by gross domestic product or gross national product, but nothing backs the money. The US dollar is not backed by anything. You thinking that because they giving these people a whole bunch of monopoly money that they getting them currency, that they giving them real money. Real money is transferred in gold and silver. If these people are not collecting gold and silver and they collecting fiat currency, they not collecting money. They artificially floating the fractional reserve banking system, keeping them in power under the pretense of wealth. But the pretense is false. We got to get to the real money, back to the gold standard, back to the silver standard. If we don't do that, then fiat worthless piece of paper becomes our destiny. We don't want that shit. Fuck that. Wipe my ass with it.
What do I do?
You need to contact the office in the diplomatic office in DC for Sierra Leone so you can fight for your reparations.
Look,
because the Africans reclaiming their shit. So if you one of them, then you need to be fighting for your reparations, like right along with them.
Yeah, well, I done had a delegation at my family union from Sierra Leone. Over 30 people, okay, came to my
I'm not arguing with that. I'm not disputing that. I'm just telling you that if you're trying to get reparations, you need to contact the consulate for Sierra Leone so that you can have a political body to represent you in your negotiations for your reparations. That's all I'm saying.
Well, what about my grandmother, Olivia? That's a Cherokee. Because I understand Cherokees are getting reparations.
Well, I have to ask you this question. Are you a matriarchal descendant or patriarchal descendant? Meaning, do your ancestral do your ancestral lineage pass down through your motherland or your fatherland?
I said my grandmother.
So then you can't fight for your Sierra Leone's reparation and fight for your grandmama too, because you're gonna have to choose.
Why can't I fight for both?
Because
they both are legitimate. Why
can't they both may be legitimate, but they only can pay out one claim.
Why is that? I disagree with that.
Well, for the
you got a right to disagree. And I can help try to get us to understand that our ancestors left us a structural system that if we remember our culture, we don't have to ask nobody for shit. We tell everybody where they belong on our land. They don't tell us where we belong. They don't ship us off to plantations and call them reserves. Them people have nothing to do with us collectively. Those were people that was made native by presidential orders. That don't make them organic to the land. And so as soon as y'all get that through y'all head, we gonna make progress at lightning speed. But the process is slow because we have to wake up a certain percentage of us to activate our mother line's matriarchal right to bring back in the great law at the close of the old age and the dawn of the new age. They told us everything, and I've drug all of the secrets out in the open because I was asked to by a series of chiefs that preceded me. Now, this shit ain't no secret no more. It's the cognitive dissonance and rationalizing the information that's the problem. Right? So I know what I'm doing to help us, but don't nobody else have to know. Because it might be, it's a possibility, it's above their pay grade and their spiritual rank in order to know what I'm doing. Because this shit is complicated for me and I'm actually doing it. So for somebody who don't have the same spiritual guidance to the same level, they might think I'm crazy for 20 years after they figure it out. Because I would have had to be crazy to see all this shit for what it is. Because the only sane person in the insane world is the crazy motherfucker. And all this shit is insanity to me. So everybody got different perspectives of looking at stuff. I don't mind people disagreeing with me. We ain't supposed to all have the same opinion about everything all the time. Or else we'd just be some go along to get along, spineless ass people trying to figure out our way and getting our head busted every turn. So we got to be willing to accept the constructive criticism and the one